Dr. Elise Hart stood frozen in the doorway of the executive boardroom at Sterling Medical Center, her nursing badge pinned to her faded teal scrubs, her heart pounding like a drum in a storm. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and power, the kind that clung to men like Victor Sterling, who sat behind a vast mahogany desk, his presence as commanding as a monarch on a throne. His steel blue eyes, once warm with promises whispered in stolen moments, now cut through her with a coldness that made her breath catch. 6 months ago, she had married this man, believing his vows of love were as solid as the gold band on her finger. Now, his words sliced through that illusion like a scalpel. "You're fired, Elise," Victor said, his voice devoid of the tenderness that had once drawn her to him. The words echoed in the cavernous room, each syllable a blow to her chest. She gripped the doorframe, her knuckles whitening, as if it could anchor her against the tidal wave of his rejection. "Victor, what are you saying?" Elise asked, her voice trembling, despite her effort to keep it steady. "I don't understand." He leaned back in his chair, his tailored suit a stark contrast to her worn scrubs. "I'm saying that my wife working as a nurse in my hospital is an embarrassment to the Sterling name. People talk, Elise. They whisper that Victor Sterling couldn't marry within his own class. They mock me for choosing someone beneath me." The accusation stung like a lash, each word laced with disdain. Elise's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, where a secret fluttered. A child, their child, was growing within her. She had planned to tell him tonight, over candlelight and soft music, imagining his joy at the news. Now, that dream crumbled. "An embarrassment," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm your wife, Victor. I love you. I thought you loved me." "Love," Victor scoffed, his laugh sharp and bitter, cutting deeper than his words. "Love doesn't erase the fact that you're just a nurse, Elise. It doesn't make you fit for the Sterling legacy. You don't belong in my world." The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as her world tilted. Have you ever had someone you trusted strip away your identity, deem your life's work worthless? Elise had poured her soul into nursing, into saving lives, into being the steady hand in the chaos of the emergency room. To Victor, it was nothing, a mark of inferiority. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here, not in front of him. You think my work, my calling, is beneath you?" she asked, her voice low but steady now, fueled by a spark of defiance. "I save lives, Victor. What do you do that's so superior?" He stood, towering over the desk, his presence filling the room. "I build empires, Elise. I command respect. You scrub floors and change bedpans. It's not the same." The words were a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She wanted to scream, to remind him of the nights she'd held dying patients' hands, of the lives she'd saved while he signed papers in his ivory tower. But the weight of his rejection silenced her. She felt small, insignificant, as if her years of sacrifice and skill had been reduced to nothing. "Get out," he said, his tone final, like a judge passing a sentence. "Pack your things. We're done." Elise's legs moved mechanically as she turned, her mind a whirlwind of pain and disbelief. She walked through the gleaming halls of Sterling Medical Center, past nurses and doctors who glanced at her with pity or confusion. Her badge, her lifeline to this place, felt like a lead weight against her chest. She reached the locker room, her hands shaking as she opened her locker. Inside was a photo of her and Victor, taken during a rare weekend away, his arm around her, both of them laughing under a golden sunset. She tore it in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. Outside, the San Francisco air was crisp, the city's lights blurring through the tears she could no longer hold back. She stood on the sidewalk, clutching her bag, her scrubs a stark contrast to the sleek suits of passers-by. The world moved on, indifferent to the collapse of her life. She thought of the child inside her, the secret she hadn't shared. Would she tell him now? Could she bear to tie herself to a man who saw her as less than nothing? As she walked toward her small apartment, the weight of betrayal settled into her bones. Victor's words replayed in her mind, just a nurse. They were a brand, a mark of shame he'd burned into her soul. But beneath the pain, a flicker of resolve began to grow. She was more than his judgment, more than the Sterling name could define. She was Elise Hart, a woman who had faced death in hospital rooms and came out stronger. If Victor thought her unworthy, She would show him and the world what she was capable of. That night, alone in her dimly lit apartment, Elise sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling, untouched, before her. She pulled out a notebook, her hands still trembling, and began to write. Not a letter to Victor, not a plea for his love, but a plan. Medical school applications, scholarship opportunities, a roadmap to a future she would build without him. She would become more than a nurse, not to prove him wrong, but to prove to herself that her worth was not defined by his cruelty. The next morning, she called her best friend Maya, a fellow nurse who had always seen Elise's potential. What did he do? Maya's voice crackled with outrage over the phone. That arrogant bastard. Elise, you're 10 times the person he'll ever be. I know, Elise said, her voice steadier now, but I need to do something, Maya. I can't let this define me. Then don't, Maya said fiercely. You've always talked about medical school. Do it. Become a surgeon, a chief, someone they can't ignore. I'll help you study and babysit whatever you need. Elise smiled for the first time in hours. You're going to regret that offer when I'm calling you at 3 a.m. with flashcards. Bring it on, Maya said. You're not just a nurse, Elise. You're a force. As the weeks passed, Elise threw herself into her plan with a ferocity born of pain. She applied to medical schools, her transcripts glowing with the grades she had earned while working night shifts. She secured a scholarship to Harvard Medical School, a dream she once thought impossible. Each acceptance letter felt like a brick in the foundation of her new life, a life where Victor Sterling's shadow couldn't reach her. But the secret growing inside her was a constant reminder of the past. She hadn't told Victor about the pregnancy, and she wasn't sure she ever would. This child was hers, a part of her strength, not a bargaining chip to win back a man who didn't deserve her. She named him Liam in her heart, a name that meant protector, a promise to shield him from the world's cruelty. As she packed for Boston, leaving behind the city where Victor's empire loomed, Elise felt a mix of grief and liberation. She was walking away from a love that had broken her, but she was stepping toward a future where she would define her own worth. The road ahead would be grueling: medical school, single motherhood, the weight of proving herself in a world that often echoed Victor's disdain. But Elise's heart was no stranger to hard fights. She had saved lives in the chaos of the ER. She could save her own. Elise's heart stepped off the train in Boston, the autumn air sharp against her skin, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and new beginnings. Her suitcase, worn but sturdy, held the essentials of her old life. A few changes of clothes, her nursing textbooks, and a single ultrasound photo tucked into a hidden pocket. At 25, she was starting over, pregnant and alone. But the weight of Victor Sterling's betrayal fueled her resolve. Harvard Medical School loomed ahead, its ivy-covered buildings both a promise and a challenge. She adjusted her coat, hiding the slight curve of her belly, and walked toward her future with a fire in her chest that no one could extinguish. The first semester was a crucible. Elise sat in lecture halls surrounded by students who seemed unburdened by the responsibilities she carried. They debated biochemistry and anatomy with ease, while she balanced morning sickness, late-night study sessions, and the constant ache of a broken heart. Her scholarship covered tuition, but every other expense, rent, food, prenatal care, came from her dwindling savings and part-time shifts at a local clinic. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by flashcards and coffee, her determination a lifeline through the exhaustion. Have you ever pushed through a moment when the world seemed stacked against you, yet something inside refused to let you break? Maya's voice was a constant anchor, crackling through late-night calls. "You're killing it," she said one evening, as Elise paced her cramped studio apartment, Liam kicking inside her. "Those Harvard kids have nothing on you. You've got grit they can't even dream of." Elise laughed, but the sound was brittle. "Grit might not be enough when I'm failing biochemistry." "You're not failing," Maya countered. "You're learning. And when you walk across that stage in 4 years, Victor Sterling will choke on his own arrogance." Elise clung to those words, taping them to her mirror alongside Liam's ultrasound. Each time doubt crept in, she looked at that grainy image, a reminder of why she couldn't falter. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was building a legacy for her son. one that no one could diminish. Her grades began to climb, her answers in class sharper, her hands steadier in lab dissections. Professors noticed, one pulling her aside after a seminar. "Hart," he said, "your precision is surgical. Ever considered specializing?" The comment sparked something in her, a vision of herself not just as a doctor, but as a surgeon, wielding skill like a weapon. Pregnancy brought its own battles. Elise hid her condition as long as she could, fearing judgment from peers or faculty. When her belly became undeniable, whispers followed her through the halls. "Single mother," they murmured, "scholarship student." She heard the subtext. She didn't belong. But Elise had faced worse than gossip. She remembered Victor's cold dismissal, his claim that her work was worthless, and used it as fuel. She aced her exams, her focus razor-sharp, proving her place with every perfect score. By the time Liam was born, in a blizzard that shut down Boston, Elise had carved out a reputation as a student who thrived under pressure. Liam's birth was a turning point. Holding her son, his tiny fingers curling around hers, Elise felt a love so fierce it redefined her. His gray eyes, so like Victor's, were a challenge and a gift. She wouldn't let those eyes carry the weight of his father's rejection. She returned to classes 6 weeks later. Liam was in a sling against her chest during study groups, and his soft gurgles were a counterpoint to her classmates' debates. Her peers softened, some offering to babysit, others marveling at her stamina. Elise didn't need their pity, she needed their respect, and she earned it, one sleepless night at a time. Clinical rotations tested her in new ways. Elise moved through hospital wards, and her nursing experience gave her an edge. While others fumbled with IV lines or flinched at blood, she was calm, her hands steady from years of real-world practice. Patients trusted her, sensing the empathy of someone who'd been on the other side of the stethoscope. One elderly woman, recovering from a stroke, gripped Elise's hand and said, "You're not like the others, you see us." Those words became a mantra, a reminder that her past as a nurse wasn't a weakness but a strength. Her surgical rotation sealed her path. In the operating room, Elise found her calling. The precision, the stakes, the dance of scalpel and suture, it was where she belonged. Her attending, Dr. Patel, watched her close a wound with stitches so fine they were nearly invisible. "Hart," he said, "you've got the hands of a cardiac surgeon. Keep this up, and you'll be running your own OR someday." Elise nodded, but inside she was already envisioning it. Chief of surgery, her name on the door, her skill saving lives Victor could never touch. The years blurred into a rhythm of study, motherhood, and survival. Liam grew from a curious toddler to a bright 5-year-old, his questions about the world as sharp as his mother's mind. "Why do hearts beat, Mommy?" he asked one evening, sprawled across her textbooks. "Because they're strong," she said, "like you." She taught him to read using medical journals, his small fingers tracing diagrams of the heart. He was her partner in this journey, his laughter a balm for the nights when memories of Victor's cruelty resurfaced. By her final year, Elise was a standout. She matched into a residency at Johns Hopkins, a feat that had her classmates whispering in awe. Her professors wrote glowing letters, one calling her a once-in-a-generation talent. But the achievement felt hollow without someone to share it with. Maya flew in for her graduation. Liam perched on her shoulders, waving a tiny flag as Elise crossed the stage. "You did it," Maya said, tears in her eyes. "You're a doctor now." Elise hugged her, Liam giggling between them. Not just a doctor, she thought, a survivor. The move to Baltimore was bittersweet. Elise left Boston with a medical degree and a 6-year-old son who dreamed of being a doctor like her. Johns Hopkins was relentless, and the residency was a gauntlet of long hours and impossible cases. But Elise thrived in the chaos, her nursing instincts blending with her surgical precision. She operated on hearts, mending what was broken, each surgery a defiance of Victor's claim that she was less. Her colleagues respected her. Patients adored her, and her reputation grew. She published papers, and her techniques were studied in medical schools. Her name whispered in awe. Liam was her anchor. At night, when she stumbled home exhausted, he'd curl up beside her, asking about her day. "Did you save someone today, Mommy?" he'd say, his gray eyes bright with pride. Every day she'd reply, kissing his forehead. He was her reason, her proof that love could build something stronger than betrayal could destroy. She shielded him from the sterling name, from the man who'd discarded them both. Liam didn't need a father who saw them as unworthy. He had a mother who taught him he was enough. 9 years after Victor's betrayal, Elise stood at a crossroads. An offer came from Sterling Medical Center, of all places, to lead their surgical department. The irony was cruel. The hospital that had cast her out now wanted her as chief of surgery. She stared at the letter, her fingers tracing the embossed logo. Accepting meant returning to Victor's empire, facing the man who'd shattered her. Refusing meant letting fear win. Elise looked at Liam, now 9, sketching a heart diagram at their kitchen table. She thought of the nurse she'd been, the surgeon she'd become, and the mother she was. She made her choice. Dr. Elise Hart sat at her desk in the chief surgeon's office at Sterling Medical Center. The hum of the hospital, a distant pulse beyond her closed door. The encounter with Victor Sterling lingered like a shadow, his puzzled gaze on Liam a splinter in her mind. She had built a fortress around her life, her son, her career. But Victor's return threatened to crack its foundation. His words, regret for throwing away the best thing in his life, echoed in her head, stirring a mix of old pain and cautious curiosity. Did he mean it, or was it the polished charm of a man accustomed to winning? Elise pushed the thought aside, focusing on the surgical schedule before her. A complex aortic repair loomed that afternoon, demanding her full attention. Lives depended on her precision, not her past. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Mrs. Carter, Liam's nanny. "Liam's asking if the nice man from your office can come to his soccer game this weekend. Says he seemed lonely." Elise's chest tightened. Liam, with his uncanny ability to read people, had sensed something in Victor, a sadness, perhaps, that mirrored her own buried grief. She typed a quick reply, "Tell him we'll talk about it tonight." Inviting Victor into Liam's world was a risk she wasn't ready to take. Not yet. The morning passed in a blur of consultations and pre-op preparations. Elise moved through the hospital with purpose, her white coat a symbol of the authority she'd earned. Nurses nodded respectfully, doctors sought her advice, and patients trusted her steady hands. Yet beneath her professional calm, a storm brewed. Victor's presence was a reminder of the secret she'd carried for 9 years. Liam was his son, a truth she'd guarded fiercely, not out of spite but to protect her boy from a man who'd once deemed her unworthy. Would Victor's regret extend to Liam, or would he see their son as another blemish on the Sterling legacy? At noon, Elise grabbed a coffee from the hospital cafeteria, the same place where she and Victor had once shared stolen moments during her nursing residency. The memory stung, a younger Elise, laughing over lukewarm coffee, believing in a love that could bridge their worlds. She shook it off, but the past clung like damp air. As she sipped her coffee, her colleague Dr. Patel approached, his expression serious. "Elise, have you seen the board's agenda for next week? They're discussing your department's budget, but there's a rumor Victor Sterling's pushing for a review of your appointment." Elise's grip tightened on her cup. "A review? My department's outcomes are the best in the region." Patel nodded. "Exactly. Some think it's personal. His family's old guard doesn't like that a former nurse is running their flagship hospital's surgical wing. Watch your back." The warning settled like a stone in her stomach. Victor's family, led by the formidable Margaret Sterling, had always viewed her as an outsider. 9 years ago they'd pressured Victor to end their marriage, and now they might see her rise as a threat to their control. Elise thanked Patel and returned to her office, her mind racing. If Victor was behind this, was it a power play or ignorance of her identity? Either way, she wouldn't let them undermine her again. The aortic repair surgery demanded her focus. In the operating room, Elise was a conductor, and her movements were in sync with her commands. The patient, a 52-year-old man with a life-threatening aneurysm, lay open before her, his heart a delicate puzzle. Her hands moved with precision, suturing with a steadiness honed by years of discipline. "This is who I am," she thought, as she closed the final stitch, not just a nurse, but a surgeon who holds lives in her hands. The surgery was a success. The patient is stable, and her team's quiet nods of respect were a balm to her unease. After scrubbing out, Elise checked her phone. Another text from Mrs. Carter. "Liam's fine, but he keeps talking about Mr. Sterling. Says he looked like he needed a friend." Elise sighed, the weight of Liam's empathy pressing on her. Her son had inherited Victor's knack for reading people, a gift that made him both brilliant and vulnerable. She couldn't ignore his intuition, but letting Victor into their lives was a gamble. What if he recognized Liam's resemblance and demanded a role he hadn't earned? What if he rejected him, as he'd rejected her? That evening, Elise picked Liam up from Mrs. Carter's. His face lit up as he bounded into her car, his soccer cleats dangling from his bag. "Mom, did you save someone today?" he asked, his gray eyes bright with curiosity. "Every day," she said, ruffling his hair. "How was school?" "Good, but I was thinking about Mr. Sterling. He seemed kinda sad. Can we invite him to my game? It might cheer him up." Elise's heart clenched. "Liam, Mr. Sterling's a busy man. I don't think he can come. But he was nice to me," Liam insisted. "And you always say helping people makes us feel better." She smiled despite herself. Liam's compassion, so like her own, was a reminder of why she fought so hard. "We'll see," she said, buying time. "Let's talk about it later, okay?" At home, Elise cooked dinner, Liam chattering about his science project, a model of the circulatory system he was building for the school fair. As they ate, she watched him, marveling at his confidence, his curiosity, the way he carried himself like he belonged anywhere. He was her greatest achievement, proof that love could triumph over betrayal. But Victor's reappearance threatened that peace. If he pieced together the truth, would he fight for Liam, or would his family's expectations win again? Later, as Liam slept, Elise sat at her kitchen table, a medical journal open but unread. She pulled out the ultrasound photo from her wallet, its edges worn from years of handling. Liam's existence was her secret, her strength, but also her vulnerability. Victor's regret seemed genuine, but she'd trusted him once before and paid the price. Could she risk exposing Liam to a man who might not stay? Have you ever held a truth so heavy it shaped every choice you made? The next morning, Elise arrived at the hospital to find an email from the board, an urgent meeting with Victor Sterling. Her pulse quickened. Sarah, her assistant, confirmed he was already waiting in the conference room. Elise straightened her coat, her resolve hardening. Whatever Victor wanted, she would face him as Dr. Hart, not the nurse he'd discarded. Victor stood as she entered, his expression a mix of professionalism and something softer. Hope, perhaps. "Dr. Hart, thank you for coming on short notice. I need to discuss something critical." "Go ahead, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice cool, professional. He hesitated, then leaned forward. "I've been reviewing old personnel files. There's a nurse, Elise Mansfield, who worked here 9 years ago. Terminated without cause. Her phone, it's you, isn't it?" The question hit like a thunderclap. Elise kept her face neutral, years of practice masking the chaos within. "Why do you think that, Mr. Sterling?" "Because I spent all night going through records," Victor said, his voice urgent. "The dates, the photo, it's you, Elise, you're my ex-wife." She stood, moving to the window, the city sprawling below. "Hello, Victor," she said, her voice carrying 9 years of pain and triumph. "It really is me." Victor staggered back, shock etched on his face. "How, you're a surgeon, chief of surgery. When we were married, you were just a nurse." "Yes," Elise said, turning to face him. "Just a nurse. That was the problem, wasn't it?" "I was an idiot," Victor said, his voice breaking. "An arrogant fool. I'm so sorry, Elise. You destroyed our marriage because you cared more about your family's approval than the woman who loved you," she said, her words sharp but controlled. "I know," he said, his eyes pleading. "I've regretted it every day for 9 years." Elise studied him, seeing genuine remorse, but also the shadow of the man who'd broken her. "What do you want, Victor?" "To apologize," he said, "to tell you that you were right. Love should have been enough. You were always more than enough." "Apology noted," she said, her voice steady, "but some wounds don't heal with words." Dr. Elise Hart sat at her desk in the chief surgeon's office at Sterling Medical Center. the hum of the hospital, a distant pulse beyond her closed door. The encounter with Victor Sterling lingered like a shadow, his puzzled gaze on Liam a splinter in her mind. She had built a fortress around her life, her son, her career, but Victor's return threatened to crack its foundation. His words, regret for throwing away the best thing in his life, echoed in her head, stirring a mix of old pain and cautious curiosity. Did he mean it, or was it the polished charm of a man accustomed to winning? Elise pushed the thought aside, focusing on the surgical schedule before her. A complex aortic repair loomed that afternoon, demanding her full attention. Lives depended on her precision, not her past. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Mrs. Carter, Liam's nanny. "Liam's asking if the nice man from your office can come to his soccer game this weekend. Says he seemed lonely." Elise's chest tightened. Liam, with his uncanny ability to read people, had sensed something in Victor. A sadness, perhaps, that mirrored her own buried grief. She typed a quick reply, "Tell him we'll talk about it tonight." Inviting Victor into Liam's world was a risk she wasn't ready to take, not yet. The morning passed in a blur of consultations and pre-op preparations. Elise moved through the hospital with purpose, her white coat a symbol of the authority she'd earned. Nurses nodded respectfully, doctors sought her advice, and patients trusted her steady hands. Yet, beneath her professional calm, a storm brewed. Victor's presence was a reminder of the secret she'd carried for 9 years. Liam was his son, a truth she'd guarded fiercely, not out of spite, but to protect her boy from a man who'd once deemed her unworthy. Would Victor's regret extend to Liam, or would he see their son as another blemish on the Sterling legacy? At noon, Elise grabbed a coffee from the hospital cafeteria, the same place where she and Victor had once shared stolen moments during her nursing residency. The memory stung. A younger Elise, laughing over lukewarm coffee, believing in a love that could bridge their worlds. She shook it off, but the past clung like damp air. As she sipped her coffee, her colleague Dr. Patel approached, his expression serious. "Elise, have you seen the board's agenda for next week? They're discussing your department's budget, but there's a rumor Victor Sterling's pushing for a review of your appointment." Elise's grip tightened on her cup. "A review? My department's outcomes are the best in the region." Patel nodded. "Exactly. Some think it's personal. His family's old guard doesn't like that a former nurse is running their flagship hospital's surgical wing. Watch your back." The warning settled like a stone in her stomach. Victor's family, led by the formidable Margaret Sterling, had always viewed her as an outsider. 9 years ago, they'd pressured Victor to end their marriage, and now they might see her rise as a threat to their control. Elise thanked Patel and returned to her office, her mind racing. If Victor was behind this, was it a power play or ignorance of her identity? Either way, she wouldn't let them undermine her again. The aortic repair surgery demanded her focus. In the operating room, Elise was a conductor, her movements in sync with her commands. The patient, a 52-year-old man with a life-threatening aneurysm, lay open before her, his heart a delicate puzzle. Her hands moved with precision, suturing with a steadiness honed by years of discipline. "This is who I am," she thought, as she closed the final stitch. Not just a nurse, but a surgeon who holds lives in her hands. The surgery was a success, the patient was stable, and her team's quiet nods of respect were a balm to her unease. After scrubbing out, Elise checked her phone. Another text from Mrs. Carter. "Liam's fine, but he keeps talking about Mr. Sterling. Says he looked like he needed a friend." Elise sighed, the weight of Liam's empathy pressing on her. Her son had inherited Victor's knack for reading people, a gift that made him both brilliant and vulnerable. She couldn't ignore his intuition, but letting Victor into their lives was a gamble. What if he recognized Liam's resemblance and demanded a role he hadn't earned? What if he rejected him, as he'd rejected her? That evening, Elise picked Liam up from Mrs. Carter's. His face lit up as he bounded into her car, his soccer cleats dangling from his bag. "Mom, did you save someone today?" He asked, his gray eyes bright with curiosity. "Every day," she said, ruffling his hair. "How was school?" "Good, but I was thinking about Mr. Sterling. He seemed kinda sad. Can we invite him to my game? It might cheer him up." Elise's heart clenched. "Liam, "Mr. Sterling's a busy man. I don't think he can come. But he was nice to me," Liam insisted, "and you always say helping people makes us feel better." She smiled despite herself. Liam's compassion, so like her own, was a reminder of why she fought so hard. "We'll see," she said, buying time. "Let's talk about it later, okay?" At home, Elise cooked dinner, Liam chattering about his science project, a model of the circulatory system he was building for the school fair. As they ate, she watched him, marveling at his confidence, his curiosity, the way he carried himself like he belonged anywhere. He was her greatest achievement, proof that love could triumph over betrayal. But Victor's reappearance threatened that peace. If he pieced together the truth, would he fight for Liam, or would his family's expectations win again? Later, as Liam slept, Elise sat at her kitchen table, a medical journal open but unread. She pulled out the ultrasound photo from her wallet, its edges worn from years of handling. Liam's existence was her secret, her strength, but also her vulnerability. Victor's regret seemed genuine, but she'd trusted him once before and paid the price. Could she risk exposing Liam to a man who might not stay? Have you ever held a truth so heavy it shaped every choice you made? The next morning, Elise arrived at the hospital to find an email from the board, an urgent meeting with Victor Sterling. Her pulse quickened. Sarah, her assistant, confirmed he was already waiting in the conference room. Elise straightened her coat, her resolve hardening. Whatever Victor wanted, she would face him as Dr. Hart, not the nurse he'd discarded. Victor stood as she entered, his expression a mix of professionalism and something softer, hope, perhaps. "Dr. Hart, thank you for coming on short notice. I need to discuss something critical." "Go ahead, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice cool, professional. He hesitated, then leaned forward. "I've been reviewing old personnel files. There's a nurse, Elise Mansfield, who worked here 9 years ago, terminated without cause. Her phone, it's you, isn't it?" The question hit like a thunderclap. Elise kept her face neutral, years of practice masking the chaos within. "Why do you think that, Mr. Sterling?" "Because I spent all night going through records," Victor said, his voice urgent. "The dates, the photo, it's you. Elise, you're my ex-wife." She stood, moving to the window, the city sprawling below. "Hello, Victor," she said, her voice carrying 9 years of pain and triumph. "It really is me." Victor staggered back, shock etched on his face. "How? You're a surgeon, chief of surgery. When we were married, you were just a nurse." "Yes," Elise said, turning to face him, "just a nurse. That was the problem, wasn't it?" "I was an idiot," Victor said, his voice breaking. "An arrogant fool. I'm so sorry, Elise. You destroyed our marriage because you cared more about your family's approval than the woman who loved you," she said, her words sharp but controlled. "I know," he said, his eyes pleading. "I've regretted it every day for 9 years." Elise studied him, seeing genuine remorse but also the shadow of the man who'd broken her. "What do you want, Victor?" "To apologize," he said. "To tell you that you were right. Love should have been enough. You were always more than enough." "Apology noted," she said, her voice steady. "But some wounds don't heal with words." Dr. Elise Hart stood behind her desk in the chief surgeon's office at Sterling Medical Center, the San Francisco skyline a distant blur through the window. Victor Sterling's admission of regret hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting their past to this charged moment. His face, etched with anguish, bore the weight of 9 years of mistakes. But Elise's heart was a fortress, guarded by the pain he'd inflicted and the life she'd built without him. The truth of Liam's paternity burned in her chest, a secret she'd carried like a shield. Now, with Victor standing before her, suspecting but not knowing, that shield felt both heavy and brittle. Have you ever held a truth so powerful it could reshape lives, yet so dangerous it might destroy them? Victor's voice broke the silence, low and urgent. "Lise, I need to know, is Liam my son?" The question she'd dreaded for 9 years landed like a blow. Elise's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral, her years of surgical precision lending her control. She moved to her chair, the desk a barrier between them, and sat, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Why would you think that?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm within. "Because he looks like me," Victor said, his words tumbling out. Those gray eyes, his bone structure, the way he carries himself. And the timing, Elise. 9 years ago, you left, and now Liam's 9. I'm not a fool. I can do the math. Elise's fingers tightened around the pen on her desk, the only sign of her turmoil. Do you remember our last conversation, Victor? She said, her tone measured. Do you recall what you told me? Every word, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It haunts me. Then you remember calling me an embarrassment to your family, she said, her eyes locked on his. You remember firing me because being married to a nurse was beneath your social status. You said love wasn't enough, that I wasn't suitable for the Sterling legacy. Victor flinched, as if her words were physical strikes. I remember, he said, and I've regretted it every day since. Elise leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. 3 weeks after you divorced me, I found out I was pregnant with your child. Victor staggered, gripping the chair for support, his face pale. Pregnant, he whispered. You were pregnant, and you didn't tell me? Tell you what, Elise said, her laugh bitter and raw. That the woman you threw away for being just a nurse was carrying your heir? The one you said wasn't worthy of your family's name? I would have done the right thing, he said, his voice desperate. I would have… What? She interrupted. Married me out of obligation? Kept me as a shameful secret while raising Liam in your world? You lost the right to know when you decided I wasn't good enough. Victor collapsed into the chair, his hands trembling. I have a son, he said, more to himself than to her. A son. You have a biological connection to my son, Elise corrected, her voice firm. That's all. Liam is mine. I raised him, loved him, built a life for him where he knows he's enough. Ow, Rora, please, Victor said, his eyes pleading. Can I know him? Can I be part of his life? Why? She asked, her gaze unwavering. So you can decide he's not good enough either? So your family can judge him as they judged me? No, he said, his voice breaking. Because he's my son and I've missed 9 years of his life. Because I want to be the father I should have been. Elise studied him, the man who had once been her world now reduced to a supplicant in her office. His remorse seemed genuine, but she remembered his cruelty, the way he'd discarded her without hesitation. Liam doesn't know who you are, she said. I told him his father wasn't able to be part of our lives. What I tell him now depends on you. I want to know him, Victor said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I want to be his father, if he'll let me. And your family? Elise asked, her tone sharp. What happens when Margaret Sterling learns you have a son with the nurse she deemed unsuitable? What about the Sterling legacy and its expectations? Victor's jaw tightened. My family's expectations cost me the woman I loved and 9 years with my son. I won't let them cost me anything else. Pretty words, Elise said, echoing the skepticism she'd carried for years. You said pretty words before, Victor. I know, he said. I don't deserve your trust, but give me a chance to prove I've changed. Elise looked at him, seeing the man he'd become, older, weathered, perhaps wiser, but also the man who'd broken her. One chance, she said finally. You can meet Liam as his father, but Victor, if you hurt him, if you make him feel unwanted or unworthy, you'll never see him again. Do you understand? I understand, he said, his voice thick with relief and fear. And this doesn't change things between us. This is about Liam, nothing more. Agreed, Elise said, picking up her phone. Mrs. Carter, please bring Liam to my office. There's someone he needs to meet. As they waited, Victor's nervousness was palpable, his hands fidgeting, his eyes darting to the door. What should I tell him? He asked, his voice soft. How do I explain why I wasn't there? Tell him the truth, Elise said, that you made mistakes when you were young, and you're sorry you missed his life. He's brilliant, Victor. He won't accept vague answers. Minutes later, Mrs. Carter knocked and Liam bounded in, his energy filling the room. Hi, Mr. Sterling, he said, then paused, sensing the tension. Is everything okay, Mom? Elise took a deep breath, her heart pounding. Liam, do you remember when you asked about your father? Yeah, he said, his gray eyes curious. You said he couldn't be part of our lives. That's true, but things have changed, Elise said, gesturing to Victor. Liam, this is your father. Mr. Sterling is your dad. Liam stared at Victor, his sharp mind processing the revelation. You're my dad, he said, his tone more curious than accusatory. I am, Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. And I'm so sorry I haven't been part of your life until now. Why not? Liam asked his question directly, cutting through the years of absence. Victor looked at Elise, then back at Liam. Because I made bad decisions when I was younger. I hurt your mother, and I didn't know you existed until now. That's my fault, not hers. Liam turned to Elise. Mom, why didn't you tell him about me? Because when your father and I were married, we disagreed about what mattered in life, Elise said, choosing her words carefully. I wasn't sure he was ready to be the father you deserved. But he's ready now, Liam said, looking at Victor with fearless curiosity. Right? That's what we're going to find out, Elise said, her voice gentle but firm. Liam nodded, then turned to Victor. Do you want to be my dad more than anything? Even though I want to be a surgeon like Mom, not a businessman like you. Victor smiled, his eyes glistening. Especially because you want to be a surgeon like your mother. She's the most incredible woman I know. She is, Liam agreed, his pride in Elise shining through. She saves lives every day and never misses my soccer games. Tell me about your soccer games, Victor said, leaning forward, his interest genuine. As Liam launched into a story about his last match, Elise watched, her emotions a tangled knot. There was a spark between them, a natural connection that both warmed and terrified her. Victor was saying the right things, but could she trust him with her son's heart? Could she risk the life she'd built on the hope that he'd truly changed? Dr. Elise Hart leaned against the doorframe of her office at Sterling Medical Center, watching Victor Sterling and their son Liam talk with an ease that both warmed and unsettled her. Liam's animated gestures as he described his soccer team's latest victory were a mirror of Victor's own intensity, a reminder of the blood they shared. Victor listened, his steel blue eyes soft with a fascination Elise hadn't seen in him since their early days. 9 years ago, he'd discarded her for being just a nurse, but now he sat here, captivated by their son, unaware of the fragile bridge he was crossing into their lives. Elise's heart ached with the weight of her. Could she trust this man with Liam's future, or was she inviting old wounds to reopen? Liam's voice broke her thoughts. And then I scored the winning goal, Dad, right past the keeper. His use of dad was tentative, testing the word like a new toy. Victor's face lit up, a mix of pride and relief, as if the title were a gift he hadn't dared hope for. That's incredible, Liam, Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. I wish I'd been there to see it. Can I come to your next game? Liam glanced at Elise, seeking her approval. She nodded slightly, her expression neutral. Sure, Liam said, grinning. It's Saturday at 10. You can sit with Mom. Victor's eyes met Elise's, a silent question in them. She held his gaze, her resolve firm. One chance, she'd said, and she meant it. I'll be there, Victor said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that suggested he understood the stakes. After Liam left with Mrs. Carter, the office fell silent, the air heavy with unspoken history. Victor stood, his hands in his pockets, a gesture Elise remembered from their marriage when he was nervous. Thank you, he said, for letting me meet him, for giving me this chance. It's for Liam, Elise said, her tone clipped. He deserves to know his father, but only if you're truly here for him. I am, Victor said, stepping closer. I know I don't deserve your trust, Elise, but I'll prove I've changed for him, and for you. Elise's chest tightened. Pretty words, she said, echoing her earlier skepticism. You've said them before, Victor. They didn't hold them. I know, he said, his voice low. I was a fool, driven by my family's expectations. I threw away the best thing in my life because I thought status mattered more than love. I'm not that man anymore. Prove it, she said, her eyes searching for any hint of deceit. Because Liam's heart isn't a game, and I won't let it be broken. Victor nodded, his expression resolute. I understand. I'll show up, Elise, for every game, every moment he'll let me have. She held his gaze, weighing his sincerity against the scars of his betrayal. We'll see, she said, turning to her desk. signaling the conversation's end. I have a surgery to prepare for. As Victor left, Elise sat, her hands trembling slightly as she opened her surgical notes. The weight of the morning pressed on her, but the operating room was her sanctuary, a place where control and precision reigned. That afternoon, she performed a mitral valve repair with her usual mastery, her team moving in sync with her commands. Yet Victor's presence lingered in her mind, a distraction she couldn't afford. Have you ever faced a choice where trust meant risking everything you'd built? That evening, at home, Elise cooked dinner while Liam chattered about his day. "He's cool, Mom," he said, slicing carrots with careful precision. "Mr. Sterling, Dad, I mean, he really listened when I talked about soccer." Elise smiled, hiding her unease. "I'm glad, sweetheart. What else did you like about him?" "He asked questions like he actually cares," Liam said, his gray eyes bright. "Do you think he'll stick around?" Elise's heart clenched. "I hope so," she said, choosing her words carefully, "but we'll take it one day at a time, okay?" "Okay," Liam said, nodding. "Can I show him my science project, the heart model?" "If you want to," she said, ruffling his hair. "Let's see how Saturday goes first." The week passed in a blur of surgeries and hospital politics. Elise navigated board meetings with a sharp focus, countering subtle jabs from Victor's family allies with data on her department's success. Patient out cower me's up 30% NT. Surgical complications were down 15, she recited, her voice unwavering. Yet whispers of her past with Victor circulated, a reminder that Margaret Sterling's influence still loomed. Elise ignored focusing on Liam and her work, but the pressure was a constant undercurrent. Saturday morning dawned bright, the soccer field buzzing with parents and kids. Elise sat in the bleachers, her coffee warm in her hands. Liam warming up on the grass. Victor arrived, slightly out of place in his tailored jacket among casual parents, but his eyes were fixed on Liam. He took a seat beside Elise, his presence stirring memories she'd buried. "Thanks for letting me come," he said, his voice soft. "It's for Liam," she replied, her tone cool. "He wanted you here." Victor nodded, his gaze on their son. "He's amazing, Elise. You've done an incredible job raising him." She didn't respond, her eyes on Liam as he darted across the field, his energy infectious. The game was close, Liam's team trailing by 1, until he intercepted a pass and scored, his teammates cheering. Victor leapt to his feet, cheering louder than anyone, his face alight with pride. Elise watched, her heart softening despite herself. He looked like a father, not the man who'd once called her unworthy. After the game, Liam ran over, sweaty and beaming. "Did you see my goal, Dad?" "I did," Victor said, grinning. "You were unstoppable out there." Liam turned to Elise. "Mom, can Dad come over for pizza? To celebrate?" Elise hesitated, caught by Liam's hopeful expression. "Just pizza," she said finally. "Don't read more into it." The evening was surprisingly easy. At their small apartment, Liam showed Victor his heart model, explaining ventricles and arteries with a passion that made Elise's chest swell. Victor listened, asking questions. His interest was genuine. "You're going to be a brilliant surgeon," he said, ruffling Liam's hair. "Like Mom," Liam said, grinning. "She's the best." "She is," Victor agreed, his eyes meeting Elise's, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. After Liam went to bed, Elise and Victor sat in the living room, the silence heavy with their shared past. "You're good with him," Elise said, breaking the quiet. "He likes you." Victor's face softened. "He's easy to like. He's so much like you, smart, kind, determined." "And you," Elise said, her voice softer than she intended. "He has your eyes, your confidence." Victor leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Elise, I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be here for him, for both of you, if you'll let me know." Elise's heart wavered, but her walls held firm. "It's not about me, Victor. It's about Liam. Show up for him, consistently, and we'll see what happens." "I will," he said, his voice steady. "I promise." As he left, Elise stood at her window, watching his car disappear into the night. Liam's laughter from the game, Victor's pride, the fragile connection forming between them. It was a bridge she wasn't sure she could cross. Trust was a risk, and she'd learned to guard her heart. But for Liam, she might try. The question was whether Victor could prove he was worth it, or if his family's shadow would pull him back into the world that had once torn them apart. Dr. Elise Hart stood in the sterile glow of Sterling Medical Center's operating room, her focus razor-sharp as she guided her team through a delicate coronary bypass. The patient's heart lay exposed, a fragile rhythm under her skilled hands, but her mind flickered to the growing tension outside these walls. Victor Sterling's re-entry into her life, his budding bond with their son Liam, and the looming shadow of his family's disapproval were a storm brewing on the horizon. She pushed the thoughts aside, her scalpel steady, her voice calm as she called for sutures. In this room, she was in control, a master of life and death, but beyond it, the past threatened to unravel her carefully built world. The surgery ended successfully, the patient's vitals stabilizing as Elise stepped back, her team's quiet nods a testament to her skill. She scrubbed out, the cold water grounding her, but the unease lingered. Victor had been true to his word, showing up for Liam's soccer game, engaging with his interests. But trust was a fragile thing, and Elise had learned to guard it fiercely. Have you ever stood at the edge of a choice, knowing one step could change everything, yet fearing the fall? In her office, Elise checked her phone. A message from Mrs. Carter, Liam's nanny, waited. Liam's excited about his science fair tomorrow. Asked if Mr. Sterling could come. Elise's chest tightened. Liam's growing attachment to Victor was both a gift and a risk. She typed a reply, "I'll talk to him tonight." Allowing Victor deeper into their lives felt like inviting a hurricane, but Liam's hopeful eyes were hard to deny. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Sarah, her assistant, leaned in. "Dr. Hart, Mr. Sterling's here. Says it's urgent, no appointment." Elise's pulse quickened. "Send him in," she said, bracing herself. Victor entered, his usually polished appearance disheveled, his tie loosened, his hair mussed, as if he'd run his hands through it. "Elise," he said, his voice tight, "I need to talk to you about something serious." "What is it?" she asked, her tone professional despite the knot in her stomach. "My family knows," he said, pacing. "Margaret called the hospital yesterday. She's heard rumors about me. And me, about us. She knows he's my son." Elise's blood ran cold. "And what did she say?" Victor's jaw tightened. "She said the Sterling family has standards to maintain, that an illegitimate child reflects poorly on our name. She wants me to keep Liam's paternity quiet, to handle it discreetly." "Discreetly," Elise repeated, her voice sharp. "You mean hide him, like I was hidden when you decided I wasn't good enough?" Victor stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers. "I told her no, Elise. I told her Liam's my son, and I won't deny him." "Pretty words," she said, her skepticism a shield. "But 9 years ago, you chose your family's approval over me. Why should I believe you'll stand up to them now?" "Because I've changed," he said, his voice raw. "I lost you because I was too weak to fight them. I won't lose Liam the same way." Elise studied him, searching for cracks in his resolve. Margaret Sterling was a force, a matriarch whose influence had shaped Victor's choices once before. "If you're serious," she said, "you'll face more than words. Your family will come for you, for your position, your legacy." "Let them," Victor said, his eyes fierce. "Liam's worth more than any of it." Elise wanted to believe him, but the scars of his betrayal ran deep. "We'll see," she said, her voice steady. "Liam's science fair is tomorrow. He wants you there. Don't disappoint him." "I won't," Victor said, his expression softening. "Thank you, for giving me this chance." After he left, Elise sat, her mind racing. Margaret's involvement was a warning shot, a reminder of the power the Sterling family wielded. She'd faced their disdain before, but now Liam was in their sights. She wouldn't let them diminish her son as they had her. That evening, she tucked Liam into bed, his excitement about the science fair infectious. "Will Dad like my heart model?" he asked, his gray eyes bright. "He'll love it," Elise said, kissing his forehead just like I do. The next morning, Elise arrived at Liam's school, the gymnasium transformed into a vibrant showcase of young ingenuity. Liam stood proudly beside his model of the circulatory system, complete with working pumps and artificial blood. Elise's heart swelled as he explained it to a passing teacher, his confidence a mirror of her own determination. Victor arrived, his presence drawing curious glances from other parents, but his focus was on Liam. "Hey buddy," he said, crouching beside the display. "Tell me about this." Liam launched into an explanation, his voice animated. "It shows how blood flows through the heart. Mom helped me make it pump like a real one." Victor listened, his eyes wide with genuine fascination. "This is incredible, Liam. You're going to be a brilliant doctor someday." "Like Mom," Liam said, grinning. "She says the heart's the most important organ, but also the trickiest." "She's right," Victor said, glancing at Elise with a warmth that stirred old memories. "Your mom's the smartest person I know." Elise's cheeks warmed, but she kept her expression neutral. The judge approached, and Liam presented his project with poise, answering questions with a clarity that impressed everyone. "Excellent work, young man," the judge said. "This is advanced thinking for your age." As the judge moved on, Liam turned to his parents, his face glowing. "Do you think I'll win?" "Win or lose, I'm so proud of you," Elise said, hugging him tightly. "Me too," Victor added, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder. "You're amazing, son." The word son hung in the air, a bridge between them that felt both solid and fragile. Elise watched Victor, noting the sincerity in his eyes, but the shadow of Margaret's threat lingered. After the fair, Liam's suggestion caught her off guard. "Since I did well, can we all go for ice cream, like a real family?" Elise exchanged a glance with Victor, his expression hopeful but cautious. "What do you think?" she asked, buying time. "Ice cream sounds perfect," Victor said, looking to her for approval. "Okay," Elise agreed, her voice firm. "Just ice cream. Don't make it more than it is." At the ice cream shop, Liam chattered about his profession and his dreams of becoming a surgeon, while Elise and Victor fell into an easy rhythm, their shared past surfacing in small moments. "Remember when we used to get ice cream here during my residency?" Elise said, the memory slipping out before she could stop it. "You'd quiz me on anatomy while we ate," Victor said, smiling. "You always knew more than I did. You were too busy charming everyone to study," she teased, then caught herself. The ease of their banter was dangerous, a reminder of what they'd once had. Liam watched them, his eyes sharp. "You guys seem happy together," he said, his tone hopeful. "We were," Elise said softly, "for a while." "What happened?" Liam asked, his curiosity cutting through the moment. Victor answered, his voice careful. "I made some bad choices, Liam. I thought other people's opinions mattered more than your mom's feelings." "That's dumb," Liam said, his bluntness making Victor chuckle. "It was," Victor agreed. "I'm trying to be smarter now." Elise's heart wavered, but she held firm. "Liam, it's complicated. Trust takes time." "How much time?" Liam asked, his eyes on her. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said. "We'll figure it out together." As they left the shop, Liam hugged both parents, his joy a stark contrast to the storm Elise sensed approaching. Victor's commitment to Liam was clear, but Margaret Sterling's influence was a gathering force, and Elise knew the battle for their family's future was just beginning. Dr. Elise Hart stood in the quiet of her office at Sterling Medical Center, the hum of the hospital a faint pulse beyond the walls. The memory of Liam's laughter at the ice cream shop lingered, as did Victor Sterling's earnest promise to be a father. But the warmth of that moment was overshadowed by the growing threat of Margaret Sterling, Victor's grandmother, whose influence had once torn Elise's world apart. The matriarch's call to the hospital, her disdain for Liam as an illegitimate heir, was a warning of the battle ahead. Elise's fingers traced the edge of her desk, her resolve hardening. She had fought too hard to let the Sterling family diminish her son as they had her. Have you ever faced a force so powerful it threatened everything you'd built, yet found strength in what you refused to lose? Her phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Patel. "Board meeting tomorrow. Rumor is Margaret's pushing to challenge your position. Stay sharp." Elise's jaw tightened. Margaret's reach extended beyond Victor, into the hospital's board, where her allies held sway. Elise had faced skepticism as a former nurse-turned-chief surgeon, but this was different, a calculated move to undermine her authority. She replied, "Thanks for the heads up, I'm ready." That evening, Elise sat with Liam at their kitchen table, his science fair ribbon pinned proudly to the fridge. He was sketching a new project, a heart monitor for kids, his pencil moving with the precision of a budding surgeon. "Mom," he said, glancing up, "is Dad coming to my next game? He really liked the last one." Elise's heart clenched at his use of Dad. "I'll ask him," she said, keeping her tone light. "He's been busy, but I know he wants to be there." Liam nodded, satisfied, and returned to his sketch. Elise watched him, marveling at his resilience. He deserved a father who would fight for him, but Margaret's shadow loomed, a reminder of the cost Victor might face for claiming Liam. Could she trust Victor to stand firm against his family's pressure, or would history repeat itself? The next morning, Elise arrived at the hospital to find Victor waiting outside her office, his expression grim. "Elise, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. "My grandmother's here. She wants a meeting with me, and I think she's coming for you too." Elise's pulse quickened, but she kept her composure. "What does she want?" "To control the narrative," Victor said, running a hand through his hair. "She's furious about Liam, about us. She's threatening to push for a board vote to remove you as chief surgeon, unless I agree to keep Liam's paternity quiet." Elise's eyes narrowed. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her no," he said, his voice firm. "I won't hide my son." "But, Elise, she's not bluffing. She's got enough board members in her pocket to make trouble." "Then let her try," Elise said, her voice steady. "I've earned my place here. If she wants a fight, I'm ready." Victor's eyes softened with admiration. "You've always been stronger than I was. But I'm not letting you face this alone. I'll be in that meeting, and I'll back you up." Elise nodded, her skepticism tempered by his resolve. "We'll see," she said, turning toward the conference room. "Let's go." The boardroom was a study in power, its long table lined with executives and Sterling family allies, Margaret Sterling at the far end like a queen holding court. At 78, she was formidable, her silver hair immaculate, her presence commanding silence. Elise entered with Victor, her white coat a symbol of her authority, her gaze unflinching. Margaret's eyes locked on her, cold and assessing, as if seeing the nurse she'd dismissed years ago. "Dr. Hart," Margaret began, her voice sharp, "we're here to address concerns about your leadership and its impact on Sterling Medical Center's reputation. My leadership has increased patient outcomes by 30% and surgical success rates to the highest in the region," Elise said, her tone calm but firm. "What specific concerns do you have?" Margaret's lips thinned. "Your personal history with my grandson raises questions of impartiality. A former nurse, married to the hospital's owner, is now in a position of power. It suggests favoritism." Elise's temper flared, but she kept her voice steady. "My credentials, Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins residency, Mayo Clinic fellowship, are public record. My department's performance speaks for itself. If you're implying my position was unearned, I'd like evidence." The room grew quiet, board members shifting uncomfortably. Margaret's eyes flashed. "Your past marriage to Victor and the sudden appearance of a child complicate matters. The Sterling name cannot afford a scandal." "The child is my son," Victor interjected, his voice cutting through the tension. "And he's not a scandal. He's a brilliant boy, and I'm proud to be his father." Margaret's face tightened. "You're throwing away the family legacy for a mistake, Victor. This child is illegitimate, and acknowledging him publicly jeopardizes our reputation." "He's my son," Victor said, standing, his voice unwavering. "And Elise is one of the finest surgeons in the country. If anyone's jeopardizing our reputation, it's you, grandmother, by clinging to outdated prejudices." Elise's heart raced, a mix of surprise and respect for Victor's defiance. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You're making a grave error, Victor. The board can vote to remove Dr. Hart, and if you persist, your position as CEO is at risk." "Then let them vote," Victor said, his gaze steady. "I'd rather lose everything than deny my son, or let you undermine Elise's achievements." Elise spoke, her voice clear. "Mrs. Sterling, I've built my career on merit, raising a child alone while excelling in a field that demands perfection. If my presence here threatens your family's image, perhaps the problem lies with your values, not mine." Margaret's face flushed with indignation. "You dare lecture me on values," she snapped. "A nurse who trapped my grandson with a pregnancy. I was pregnant after he divorced me. Elise cut in, her voice like steel. I raised Liam alone, without a cent from your family. If anyone's trapped, it's you, caught in a mindset that values status over substance. The room fell silent, the weight of Elise's words settling over the board. Victor stepped closer to her, a united front. This hospital thrives because of Elise's leadership, he said. If you force her out, you'll lose the best surgeon you have, and I'll walk with her. Margaret's eyes widened, shock replacing her composure. You'd abandon the family business for this woman and her child? For my family, Victor corrected. Liam and Elise are worth more than any title or inheritance. The board chair cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Perhaps we should table this discussion and review the data before voting. Dr. Hart's performance metrics are undeniable. Margaret stood, gathering her purse with icy dignity. This isn't over, Victor. You're choosing a dangerous path. Good, Victor said. I don't want to go back to the one I was on. After the meeting, Elise and Victor stood alone in the boardroom, the air heavy with the confrontation's aftermath. Thank you, Elise said quietly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Victor said, his voice soft but firm. You and Liam are my family. I won't let her tear us apart again. Elise studied him, seeing a man changed by regret, but the scars of his past betrayal held her back. Your family won't stop, she said. This is just the beginning. I know, Victor said, but I meant what I said. I'll fight for you both, no matter the cost. Elise nodded, her heart wavering between hope and caution. For Liam's sake, she'd let Victor try, but trust would come only with time and proof that he could withstand the storm his family was about to unleash. Dr. Elise Hart sat in her office at Sterling Medical Center, the city's lights twinkling beyond her window, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. Victor Sterling's bold stand against his grandmother Margaret in the boardroom had shifted something fundamental, a crack in the wall Elise had built around her heart. His fierce defense of their son Liam and her own achievements had been a glimpse of the man he claimed to be now, one who valued family over status. Yet the weight of Margaret's threat lingered, a reminder that the Sterling family's wrath was far from spent. Elise's fingers traced the edge of a surgical journal, her mind wrestling with trust and fear. Have you ever stood at a crossroads where hope beckoned but the past warned you to stay guarded? Her phone buzzed and she received a text from Victor. Board meeting tomorrow. They're pushing for a vote on my position as CEO. I need you to know I won't back down. Elise's chest tightened. Victor's defiance was admirable, but it came with a cost, one that could ripple into Liam's life. She replied, Be careful. Liam needs you, not a martyr. She set the phone down, her thoughts drifting to her son, asleep at home, dreaming of science fairs and soccer games, unaware of the battle his existence had ignited. The next morning, Elise arrived at the hospital to a flurry of whispers. Nurses and doctors glanced her way, their eyes filled with curiosity and concern. Dr. Patel caught her in the hallway, his voice low. The board's in an uproar, Elise. Margaret rallied her allies to force Victor out. They're calling his acknowledgement of Liam a breach of family values. Elise's jaw clenched. Family values, she said, her voice sharp. They mean social status. My son's no breach. Patel nodded, his expression grim. I know, but they're framing it as a scandal to protect the Sterling brand. Be ready, they might come for you next. Elise thanked him and headed to her office, her resolve hardening. She had faced Margaret's disdain before, as a nurse deemed unworthy of the Sterling name. Now, as chief surgeon, she was a threat to their control, and Liam was a pawn in their game. She wouldn't let them win. At noon, Victor appeared at her door, his face haggard, his suit slightly wrinkled. Elise, he said, his voice urgent, I need your advice. The board meeting is in an hour, and Margaret is pushing for a vote to remove me. She's got enough support to make it close. Elise studied him, seeing the weight of his choice etched in his features. What do you want to do? She asked, her tone steady. I want to fight, he said, his eyes fierce. For Liam, for you, for what's right. but I need to know you're with me. This affects us all." Elise's heart wavered. Victor's commitment to Liam was clear, but the risk was immense. If he lost his position, the fallout could destabilize their fragile connection. "I'm with you for Liam's sake," she said, "but you need to be smart, Victor. Margaret plays dirty." "I know," he said, his voice softening. "I've spent years under her thumb. Not anymore." Elise nodded, a flicker of respect breaking through her caution. "Then make your case," she said. "Show them who you are, not who they want you to be." The boardroom was a battlefield, its air thick with tension as Victor faced a table of executives and Sterling family members. Margaret sat at the head, her silver hair gleaming under the lights, her expression one of calculated triumph. Elise slipped in quietly, taking a seat at the back, her presence a silent show of support. The board chair read the petition aloud, citing Victor's acknowledgement of an illegitimate child as conduct unbecoming of a CEO, a stain on the Sterling legacy. Victor stood, his voice steady but resonant. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've led Sterling Healthcare for 5 years, expanding our reach, improving patient outcomes, and building a reputation for excellence. Now, I'm accused of moral failure for claiming my son, Liam, is a brilliant boy who wants to be a surgeon like his mother, Dr. Elise Hart." Murmurs rippled through the room. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about your son's worth, Victor," she said. "It's about the Sterling brand. Publicly acknowledging a child born outside wedlock invites scandal. The scandal," Victor countered, his voice rising, "is suggesting that a child should be hidden to protect a name. Liam is my son, and his mother is the finest surgeon this hospital has ever had. If that threatens our brand, then our values are the problem, not my choices." Elise's heart pounded, a mix of pride and fear. Victor's words echoed her own defiance, but the stakes were high. A board member, Richard Sterling, Victor's cousin, spoke up. "Your personal choices affect our investors and our reputation. Resign quietly, Victor, and we can handle this discreetly." "No," Victor said, his tone unyielding. "I won't hide my son to appease investors. I won't let this family dictate who I love or what I stand for. If you want me out, you'll have to vote me out." Margaret leaned forward, her voice icy. "You're throwing away everything for a nurse and her child. Think carefully, Victor." "I've thought enough," he said, his eyes locked on hers. 9 years ago, I let you convince me to abandon Elise. I won't make that mistake again." The room fell silent, the weight of his defiance palpable. Elise's throat tightened, her walls softening despite herself. Victor was risking his empire for Liam, for her, a choice she'd never imagined him making. The vote was called and the tension was suffocating. One by one, board members cast their ballots, some glancing at Margaret, others avoiding Victor's gaze. When the results were announced, the room held its breath. By a margin of 7-5, the petition to remove Victor failed. Margaret's face flushed with fury, and she stormed out, followed by her loyalists, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Richard approached Victor, his tone grudging. "You turned a scandal into a victory," he said. "But this isn't over. Margaret won't let it go." "Let her try," Victor said, his voice steady. "I'm done bowing to her." After the boardroom cleared, Elise and Victor stood alone, the air heavy with the weight of what had transpired. "You didn't have to do that," Elise said, her voice soft. "You risked everything." "For you and Liam," Victor said, his eyes earnest. "You're worth it." "I should have seen that years ago." Elise studied him, seeing a man transformed by regret and resolve. "But your family," she said. "They'll come for you again, for us." "I know," he said, "but I'm ready. Are you?" Elise hesitated, her heart caught between hope and caution. "For Liam, I'll face anything," she said. "But trust takes time, Victor." "I have time," he said, his voice steady. "I'll prove it every day." As they left the boardroom, Elise's phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Carter. "Liam's fine, but he heard kids talking about a newspaper story at school. Something about his dad." Elise's blood ran cold. The media had caught wind of their story, and Liam was now in its crosshairs. She showed Victor the message, her eyes searching for him. "We'll handle it together," he said, his hand brushing hers. a fleeting touch that stirred old memories for Liam. Elise nodded, her resolve hardening. The Sterling family's verdict had spared Victor's position, but the real battle, for Liam's peace, for their fragile family, was just beginning. She wouldn't let them take her son's security, no matter the cost. Dr. Elise Hart stood in her kitchen, the morning light filtering through the window as she poured coffee. The San Francisco Chronicle spread across the counter. The headline screamed, "Sterling Healthcare CEO acknowledges illegitimate son with former nurse." The article detailed her past marriage to Victor Sterling, her termination from Sterling Medical Center 9 years ago, and the recent revelation of Liam's existence. Anonymous sources, undoubtedly Margaret Sterling's allies, painted Elise as a scheming opportunist, a narrative that twisted her achievements into a calculated trap. Her hands trembled as she read, not for herself, but for Liam, who was now exposed to the world's judgment. Have you ever faced a moment where your private truth became public fodder, threatening the ones you love most? Liam bounded into the kitchen, his school uniform crisp, his gray eyes bright. "Mom, is Dad coming to my science fair presentation today?" he asked, oblivious to the storm breaking around them. Elise forced a smile, tucking the newspaper out of sight. "I'll check with him, sweetheart," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Go grab your backpack." As Liam darted off, Elise texted Victor, "Have you seen the Chronicle? We need to talk before Liam hears about it." His reply was instant, "I'm on my way. We'll handle this together." Elise's heart wavered between gratitude and fear. Victor's commitment to Liam was clear, but the media's scrutiny could unravel the fragile bond they were building. Victor arrived within the hour, his face drawn, the newspaper clutched in his hand. "This is Margaret's doing," he said, tossing it onto the table. "She's leaking stories to undermine us, to pressure me into backing down." Elise's jaw tightened. "She's not just coming for you, Victor. This paints me as a gold digger and Liam as a scandal. He's 9. He doesn't deserve this." Victor's eyes darkened with anger. "I'll hire security, issue a statement, or do whatever it takes to protect him. I won't let my family hurt him through the press." "Words aren't enough," Elise said, her voice sharp. "Liam will face questions at school as well as whispers from kids who read their parents' papers. We need a plan now." Victor nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll talk to his principal and ensure the school handles any harassment. And I'll meet with our PR team to counter this narrative. Elise, I'm not hiding him. He's my son, and I'm proud of him." Elise studied him, seeing the man who'd defied his family in the boardroom, but the weight of their past lingered. "I'll hold you to that," she said. "But if this escalates, Liam's safety comes first. No compromises." "Agreed," Victor said, his voice firm. "Let's talk to him together before he hears it from someone else." They called Liam into the living room, his curious gaze darting between them. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Sensing their tension, Elise took a deep breath, kneeling to his level. "Liam, there's a story in the newspaper about our family. It says things about me and Dad, and about you being his son. Some people might ask you questions at school." "Like what?" Liam asked, his brow furrowing. Victor crouched beside Elise, his voice gentle. "Some people think it's unusual that I didn't know about you until recently. They're wondering why your mom and I aren't together, and they might say things that aren't fair." "That's dumb," Liam said, his bluntness making Elise smile despite her worry. "Lots of kids have parents who aren't married. Why do they care?" "Because some people judge what they don't understand," Elise said. "But we love you, and that's what matters. If anyone says anything mean, you tell them your mom's the best surgeon in the hospital, and your dad's proud to be your father." Liam grinned. "And that dad owns the whole company, so they should be nice." Victor chuckled, ruffling Liam's hair. "Exactly. We'll figure this out together, okay?" "Okay," Liam said, his confidence unshaken. "Can we still go to the science fair?" "Of course," Elise said, hugging him. "You're going to shine." The science fair was a whirlwind of excitement, Liam's heart model drawing crowds of parents and judges. Victor stood beside Elise, cheering as Liam explained his project with poise, his passion for medicine shining through. "This could change pediatric cardiology," Victor whispered to Elise, his pride evident. He's incredible. He is, Elise said, her heart swelling. But the newspaper story loomed in her mind, a shadow over Liam's moment. As the judges awarded Liam first place, his face lit up, and Victor's cheers echoed through the gym. Elise captured the moment on her phone, but her joy was tempered by the knowledge that their victory would fuel Margaret's wrath. That afternoon, Elise and Victor met with the hospital's PR team, a tense gathering in a sterile conference room. The director, Miss Lang, laid out the situation. Reporters are digging into Dr. Hart's termination 9 years ago, questioning her qualifications and suggesting favoritism in her appointment as chief surgeon. My qualifications are public record, Elise said, her voice steady. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic. My department's outcomes are the best in the region. If they want to question my merit, let them try. Ms. Lang nodded. We'll issue a statement highlighting your achievements and Mr. Sterling's commitment to family values. But the narrative of an inappropriate relationship is gaining traction. We need to be proactive. Victor leaned forward. Then make it clear that Dr. Hart earned her position through skill, not connections. And that my son is not a scandal. He's a blessing. Elise glanced at him, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her guard. Focus on the hospital's mission, she added. Compassion, excellence, integrity. That's what we stand for, not gossip. The meeting ended with a plan to release a press statement, but Elise knew it was only a bandage on a deeper wound. As they left, Victor touched her arm. I meant what I said, Elise. I'll protect Liam and you. She nodded, her heart caught between hope and caution. We'll see how this plays out, she said. But Liam's safety is non-negotiable. That evening, at home, Elise tucked Liam into bed, his first-place ribbon pinned to his bulletin board. Did I do well today, Mom? He asked, his gray eyes searching hers. You were amazing, she said, kissing his forehead. I'm so proud of you. Is Dad proud too? Liam asked, his voice soft. He is, Elise said, her throat tight. He told everyone how incredible you are. Liam smiled, drifting to sleep, but Elise's mind raced. The media storm was growing, and Margaret's influence was a relentless force. She stepped into the living room, where Victor waited, having stayed to discuss their next steps. This is going to get worse, she said, her voice low. The press will dig deeper, and your family won't stop. I know, Victor said, his eyes steady, but I'm not backing down. I've hired a security team for Liam, and I'm meeting with our legal team tomorrow to counter Margaret's moves. I won't let her hurt him. Elise studied him, seeing a man fighting for redemption, but the scars of his past betrayal held her back. You're doing the right things, she said, but trust is earned, Victor. Keep showing up for him. I will, he said, his voice firm. And for you, if you'll let me. Elise didn't respond. The weight of his words was too heavy to unpack. As he left, she stood at her window, the city's lights a reminder of the world watching them. The public glare was unrelenting, but for Liam, she would face it, just as she'd faced every challenge before. The question was whether Victor could withstand the storm, or if his family's pressure would break him again. Dr. Elise Hart stood in the emergency room of Sterling Medical Center, her surgical scrubs still crisp despite the chaos around her. The call had come mid-morning, shattering the fragile calm she'd clung to since the newspaper exposé. Liam had collapsed at school, clutching his chest during recess. Now her 9-year-old son lay on a gurney, his gray eyes wide with fear, an oxygen mask fogging with his quick breaths. Elise's hands, so steady in the operating room, trembled as she checked his pulse, her medical training at war with her mother's panic. Victor Sterling stood beside her, his face pale, his suit jacket discarded in his rush to the hospital. The media storm, Margaret Sterling's threats, the boardroom battles, all faded against the reality of Liam's fragile heartbeat. Have you ever faced a moment where everything you've fought for hung in the balance of a single, terrifying truth? Dr. Patel, the ER attending, approached with a tablet. Dr. Hart, Liam's vitals are stable, but his EKG shows an irregular rhythm. We're ordering an echocardiogram to check for structural issues. He's scared but alert. Elise nodded, her voice calm despite the storm within. Thank you, Dr. Patel. I'll review the results myself. Victor's hand hovered near her shoulder, hesitant. Elise, is he going to be okay? I don't know yet, she said. Her tone clipped as she focused on the monitor tracking Liam's heart rate. We need the echo to understand what's happening. Liam's small voice broke through, muffled by the mask. Mom, am I sick? Elise knelt beside him, forcing a smile. We're figuring it out, sweetheart. You're strong, and we're right here with you. Is Dad staying too? Liam asked, his eyes flicking to Victor. Right here, buddy, Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm not going anywhere. Elise's heart clenched at Victor's words, a promise she wanted to believe but couldn't fully trust. She squeezed Liam's hand, then stepped aside to confer with Patel. Possible congenital heart defect, she said, her voice low. He's never shown symptoms before, but his father's family has a history of arrhythmias. We'll know more soon, Patel said, the text prepping the echo now. As they waited, Elise and Victor sat in the sterile waiting area, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. Elise's mind raced through differential diagnoses, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, atrial fibrillation, a valve anomaly, each possibility a weight on her chest. Victor broke the silence, his voice low. This is my fault, isn't it? If he has a heart condition, it's from my side. Elise's eyes met his, seeing guilt etched in his features. We don't know that yet, she said, and blame won't help him. Focus on being here for him now. Victor nodded, his hands clasped tightly. I meant what I said in the boardroom, Elise. I'd give up everything for him. For you. Elise's throat tightened, but she held her guard. Show it, Victor. That's what matters. The echocardiogram results arrived, and Elise reviewed them with Patel, her heart sinking. Liam had a mild aortic stenosis, a narrowing of the valve that could explain his episode. It's manageable, Patel said. Medication is for now, and surgery may be later if it progresses. He's stable enough to go home tonight, but will need regular follow-ups. Elise exhaled, relief tempered by the new reality of Liam's condition. She returned to his side, Victor trailing her. Liam, still pale but calmer, looked up. Can I go to school tomorrow? Not yet, sweetheart, Elise said, brushing his hair back. We need to keep you safe while we figure out how to help your heart. Do you help other people's hearts? Liam asked, his trust in her absolute. Exactly, she said, her voice steady despite the ache inside. You're my most important patient. Victor crouched beside Liam, his expression soft. You're going to be okay, son. Your mom's the best surgeon there is. Liam smiled faintly. I know, she's awesome. That evening, Elise and Victor brought Liam home, settling him in with strict instructions to rest. Elise monitored his vitals, her medical instincts overriding her exhaustion. Victor stayed, his presence a quiet support as they sat in her living room, Liam asleep upstairs. Thank you for being here, Elise said, her voice soft. He needed you today. I'll always be here for him, Victor said, his eyes earnest. And for you, if you'll let me. Elise studied him, the man who'd once broken her now standing by her side in their son's crisis. I don't know if I can trust that yet, she said, but you showed up today. That's a start. Victor nodded, accepting her caution. I know I have to earn it, Elise. I'm trying. The next morning, the media storm intensified. A new article in the Chronicle speculated about Liam's health, linking it to Victor's reckless acknowledgement of an illegitimate child. Elise's phone buzzed with a call from the hospital's PR director. Dr. Hart, we're getting flooded with inquiries about Liam's condition and your past with Mr. Sterling. We need you at a meeting this afternoon. Elise glanced at Liam, coloring quietly at the kitchen table, and felt a surge of protectiveness. I'll be there, she said, her voice firm, but my son's privacy is non-negotiable. At the hospital, the PR meeting was tense, and the room was filled with executives and legal advisors. Ms. Lang, the PR director, laid out the situation. The media is framing this as a health crisis tied to a family scandal. We need a unified response to protect the hospital's reputation. My son's health is not a scandal, Elise said, her voice cutting through the room. "He's a child with a medical condition, and I expect this hospital to respect his privacy." "Of course, Dr. Hart," Lang said, her tone conciliatory. "We propose a statement affirming your leadership and Mr. Sterling's commitment to family, without addressing Liam's health directly." Victor, seated beside Elise, spoke up. "Make it clear that Dr. Hart's position is earned through her skill, not our past, and that my son is my priority, not a liability." Elise glanced at him, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her guard. "The statement's fine," she said, "but if the media crosses into Liam's personal life, I'll take legal action." The meeting ended with a plan, but Elise knew the scrutiny would only grow. As they left, Victor touched her arm. "I've hired a PR firm to counter Margaret's leaks," he said, "and security for Liam at school. I won't let this hurt him." Elise nodded, her heart softening, but still cautious. "Thank you," she said, "but we need to be proactive. Liam's already asking questions." That evening, Elise sat with Liam, explaining the media attention in simple terms. "Some people are curious about our family," she said, "but we know what's true, and we stick together." Liam nodded, his gray eyes serious. "Is Dad in trouble because of me?" "No," Victor said, joining them. "I'm proud to be your dad, Liam. That's what matters." Liam smiled, reassured, and Elise felt a pang of hope. Victor was trying, but the heart's test was ongoing, for Liam's health, for their family, for the trust she wasn't sure she could give. As she tucked Liam into bed, she whispered, "You're my strength. You know that?" "I know, Mom," he said, drifting off. "And Dad's trying too." Elise stood at her window, the city's lights a reminder of the world watching. Victor's defiance, Liam's courage, her own resilience, they were a fragile unit, tested by a storm she couldn't control. But for her son, she would face anything, even the risk of trusting Victor again. Dr. Elise Hart stood in the garden behind her modest San Francisco home, string lights twinkling above as laughter filled the air. The evening was warm, the scent of jasmine mingling with the aroma of grilled food, marking a moment she'd never imagined possible. 6 months had passed since Victor Sterling's defiant stand against his family, since the media storm that had threatened to tear their fragile bond apart. Now she watched Liam, 10 years old and radiant with pride, carry a small velvet box to Victor, who knelt before her under the soft glow. The crowd, close friends, supportive colleagues, and a few Sterling family members who'd come to accept her, held their breath. Elise's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a cautious hope she hadn't dared embrace since Victor's betrayal 9 years ago. Have you ever found that love, once broken, could heal stronger than before? Victor's eyes, those steel-blue mirrors of Liam's, were steady as he opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "Elise," he said, his voice clear and unwavering, "I lost you once because I was too weak to see your worth. I've spent every day since proving I'm the man you and Liam deserve. Will you marry me again, not for status or legacy, but for love?" Elise's breath caught, her mind flashing to the nurse she'd been, discarded for being just that, and the surgeon she'd become, standing tall in the face of Margaret Sterling's disdain. Victor had fought for them, defying his family, risking his position as CEO, shielding Liam from the media's glare. His actions spoke louder than the pretty words she'd once doubted. She glanced at Liam, his grin wide, clutching the ribbon from his latest science fair win. For him, for the family, they could be, she nodded. "Yes, Victor, I will." The crowd erupted in cheers, Liam loudest of all, rushing to hug them both. "I knew you'd say yes, Mom," he shouted, his joy infectious. Elise laughed, pulling him close, her heart full. Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch steady, a promise of the partnership they'd never had before. The wedding was intimate, held in this same garden weeks later, with Liam as the ring-bearer, his gray eyes bright with pride. The officiant's voice carried over the small gathering. "Do you, Victor, take Elise to be your wife, promising to love and support her dreams, respect her independence, and be a true partner in all aspects of your life together?" "I do," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion, "with all my heart, for all my life. And do you, Elise, take Victor to be your husband, trusting in his growth and change, believing in his commitment to you and Liam, and opening your heart to love again." "I do," Elise said, her voice steady, a smile breaking through as she met Victor's gaze. Their kiss sealed the vow, Liam cheering from the front row, and his dream of a united family was realized. The reception buzzed with warmth, colleagues toasting Elise's brilliance, friends marveling at the journey from heartbreak to redemption. Victor's cousin Richard, once Margaret's ally, raised a glass. "To the Cross family," he said, his tone grudgingly respectful, proving that love and courage outweigh status. Margaret had not attended, and her absence was a silent concession after the board's vote to keep Victor as CEO. However, a few Sterling relatives had come, drawn by Elise's strength and Liam's charm. As they danced under the stars, Victor whispered, "Any regrets?" "Only one," Elise said, her voice soft, "that it took us so long to get here." "Maybe we needed the time to become the people who could make this work," Victor said, his arms steady around her. Elise smiled, seeing the truth in his words. "And when Liam's a teenager, giving us attitude? I'll be there for every moment," Victor said, his eyes warm. "And when Margaret tries for grandchildren, we'll decide together," Elise said, her voice firm. "Our family, our choices." Liam bounded over, his face glowing. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything, son," Victor said, crouching to his level. "Are you happy? Like, really happy?" Liam's eyes, so like Victor's, searched his face. Victor looked at Elise, then back at Liam, his voice thick. "I'm happier than I ever thought possible. Your mom and you're everything I ever wanted." "Good," Liam said, nodding. "Because mom deserves someone who's all in." "She does," Victor agreed, hugging him. "And so do you." Elise watched, her throat tight with emotion. Liam had grown up secure in her love, but now he had a father who showed up, who fought for him. The media storm had faded, countered by Victor's public statements affirming Elise's merit and their family's strength. Margaret's influence had waned, her threats empty against Victor's resolve and Elise's reputation. The hospital thrived under Elise's leadership, her department a beacon of excellence. And Victor's leadership had shifted, prioritizing compassion over profit. Later, as guests mingled, Elise found a quiet moment with Liam. "You okay with all this, sweetheart?" she asked, brushing his hair back. "It's awesome, Mom," he said, grinning. "We're a real family now." "We always were," Elise said, her voice soft. "You and I were enough, but having Dad here, it's a bonus." Liam nodded, his wisdom beyond his years. "I'm glad he figured it out before it was too late." "Me too," Elise said, hugging him tightly. As the night wound down, Victor joined them, his presence a steady anchor. "Thank you, Elise," he said, his voice low. "Thank you for giving me this chance and letting us build this." "You earned it," she said, her eyes meeting his. "But it's not just about us. It's about Liam, about the life we're creating." "I know," Victor said, his hand finding hers. "I'm all in for both of you." Elise felt her heart open, not fully, but enough to let him in. The scars of his betrayal would always be there, faint lines on a heart that had healed stronger. She'd learned to trust again, not just Victor, but herself, her strength, her worth, her ability to love without losing who she was. The months that followed were a testament to their new beginning. Victor attended Liam's soccer games, helped with science projects, and learned to navigate the chaos of parenthood with a humility that surprised Elise. They faced challenges together. Liam's heart condition required monitoring, but his medication kept him stable, and Elise's expertise guided his care. The media moved on, their story no longer a scandal, but a testament to resilience and redemption. One evening, as they sat in the garden, Liam sketching a new invention, Victor turned to Elise. "We did it," he said, his voice soft. "We built something real." "We did," Elise said, her hand in his. "But it's not perfect. It's better. It's ours." Liam looked up, grinning. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Always," Victor said, laughing. "Get used to it, kid." Elise smiled, her heart full. She had been thrown away for being just a nurse, but she'd returned as a surgeon, A mother, a woman who knew her worth. Victor had learned that true strength lay in choosing love over fear, and Liam had shown them both that a child's faith could heal even the deepest wounds. Together, they were a family forged not from perfection, but from the courage to fight for each other, the wisdom to forgive, and the determination to build something beautiful from the ashes of the past.